Sending you the request. Fine.
Hi! Hello, it works!
Fantastic. Wow.
Yes.
The Instagram god is with us today.
It's not more difficult.
I don't know what happened last week, but anyway, it's so good to have you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for your invitation.
We are more prepared than last week for sure. So let's start. Some people know it's happening today with the delay,
Okay.
but there'll always be a replay on the Instagram once we post it.
Okay, good.
Okay, so thank you for joining us, and we have great pleasure to have Geraldine Godot from Domaine de l'Arlot with us today. She's been with the domain for how long now? 3 years?
More than 3 years now. I arrived here in 2014.
Oh, that long? Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah, time flies. Anyway, so it's great to have you, and it's a fantastic domain that you run in Nuits Saint-Georges. So can you give us some history and background information on this fantastic property, please?
Yes, of course. So thank you, Paolo, for your second time invitation. It's a pleasure. First, I will just give you some words and a short introduction and presentation about the domain. Domaine de l'Arlot is, we say, old and young vineyard, and old and young domain, because the vineyard existed since after the French Revolution. And during 2 centuries, the owners, there were 2 families, one family for 1 century and one family for another century, the 2nd century. Very famous, the families in Nuits Saint-Georges called Viennot and Belin, who, the first one, Viennot, started to build the vineyard and the monopole first with the Clos de l'Arlot, the building, the house, the domain, and the vineyard just around with the Domaine de l'Arlot. So during 1 century, he built it, this first monopole. After this family decided to sell to another very famous family in Nuits Saint-Georges called Belin, Belin family. And this family continued to increase the vineyard with the Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges, the second monopole, or we can say the biggest monopole for us now. And so during 2 centuries, these 2 families, we arrive at 1987, and at this moment there were nobody to success, and the family, Viennot family, decided to sell. To an insurance company called AXA Millésime, and AXA Millésime was at this moment the only one who wanted to buy the vineyards and also the building. So since 1987, the vineyard and the house have the name Domaine de l'Arlot. The Domaine de l'Arlot was created at this moment. So I say it's a new domain, but the vineyards were very old because it existed a long time before. And since 1987, There were different technical directors. The first one was Jean-Pierre de Smet. The owners built the monopoly, the two monopoles. So the first one, Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges. I said the biggest because it's more than 7 hectares. For us, it's half of the production, which is very big. And the second one is the Clos de l'Arlot. These two has the appellation Nuit Saint-Georges Premier Cru. And now, of course, we have more, not only these two monopoles, but we have also Côte de Nuit Village, Haute Côte de Nuit, Vaune Romanée Premier Cru Les Suchons, and Romanée Saint-Vivant. So now we have 15 hectares in organic culture, and for the presentation, I think it's the big lines.
Wonderful. So tell me, for those two, Clos de l'Arlot and Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges, originally they were monopoles already.
Before?
I mean, with the Vienno family, they had it was already
yes.
monopole.
Yes, it's monopoly since the beginning. We don't have a lot of, in fact, we don't have a lot of history about these two families, except the most important. They built the monopoly. They participated to the vineyards of what we have now. But to say exactly more, it's more difficult. We don't have some papers. We don't have more. But I have to say to you today.
And
but
when
we have. Sorry.
Right. So when were the Suchot and Romanée Saint-Vivant added again?
Suchot and Romanée Saint-Vivant was bought when AXA bought the domain. So at the beginning of 1918.
Okay. Great. Okay.
It's not a part of the history.
Right. Okay. No, but it's wonderful additions, of course, to the domain.
Of course. Yes.
Okay, so we have prepared 4 wines for the tasting today. We have 3 wines from 2017, and then and also a 2015. So what do you suggest we start with?
We can start with Mont des Oiseaux 17.
Okay.
And we can Mont des Oiseaux, Forêt, Orligne, and the last one, the 15.
Okay, this one, Forêt 17, Orligne, and then 15. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us about this Mont des Oiseaux.
So, Mont des Oiseaux. First, we are inside the Clos de l'Arlot for this cuvée or appellation. It's a Nuit Saint-Georges Premier Cru. And it's a part of, no, I said inside the Clos de l'Arlot, but it corresponds to the youngest vines. First, we are located at the top of, inside the amphitheater, inside the Clos de l'Arlot. I wanted to show you by the window, but it's not possible because the weather is not good today. It corresponds, I said, to the youngest vines, and it's mostly clonal selection. So since this vintage, we keep the label Premier Cru, and we give the name Mont des Oiseaux. It's a new cuvée for us since this vintage, because Mont des Oiseaux, so I didn't say before, but Clos de l'Arlot, inside the Clos de l'Arlot, here we are located in the old quarry. A long time ago, during the second owners at the middle of the 19th century, until the middle of the 19th century, it was a quarry, a very famous quarry in Premo-Prissé. You know, there's a lot on the coast. And the limestone from Premo-Prissé is a pink limestone, and the exploitation of this limestone was inside l'Arlot in Premo-Prissé. And at the end of the exploitation of the quarry, the owner, Belin family, the owner decided to build a park with a lot of trees. So now it's a beautiful place. The landscape is wonderful. We forget that the national road is just next to. And when we are inside the Clos de l'Arlot, we have the vineyard called La Gerbotte, which is Chardonnay inside the Clos de l'Arlot. And when we want to go to the vineyard or the name of this cuvée, Mont des Oiseaux, there's a little path, a little way just above the quarry, and the name of this little way is called Mont des Oiseaux. So we decided to keep this name to explain this cuvée with these youngest vines. This type of soil also different compared to the middle or the bottom. Here for this cuvée Clos Mont des Oiseaux, the type of soil is white limestone. So it's not the limestone from Premo-Prissé, it's a part because it's limestone, but it's called oolite blanche, so oolite white. And the characteristic of this cuvée, this wine, is we say a style typical of Premo-Prissé. We are not the image of Nuit Saint-Georges. For example, we will have with the Clos de Forêt Saint-Georges. Here, with the Clos inside the Clos de l'Arlot, Mont des Oiseaux, we have something very delicate. It's the typical aromas is black currant. We have a wine with a lot of freshness, and it's typical also for this vintage. We don't have a lot of color. Not only for this appellation, but for the Cuvée Orligne and the Clos des Forêts, it's the same. It's for us, it's a vintage typical for the Burgundy. The color, the tannins are for us softer or lighter compared to the other vintages or the last vintages. With, for example, 18, 19, 20. It's for me. I say it's typical, and I like this vintage for this because it's the image normally of this grape variety of Pinot Noir. So for this cuvée Mont des Oiseaux, it's a wine also very pleasant to drink young. You can keep longer. It's the typical, also it's typical for this vintage. But I don't know for you, but for me, we keep the freshness.
Yeah,
you know, we have a good balance between the acidity, between the red fruit. It's mostly red fruit compared to the Clos des Forêts. And it's yes, it's very elegant appellation of cuvée.
So tell me, when you mention it's young vines, what do you mean by young? Are they what, 10 years old, 5 years old?
I say youngest vines. I prefer youngest because it's not really young. They are planted in 1988 and 1989.
It's not young, it's 30 years old.
Yes, it's youngest.
Okay. So this this had a different name before, right? It's the same wine as the previous wine that you made, also?
Before it was called Petit Arlot.
Right. So it's exactly the same wine or same plot?
It's exactly the same, but the pruning is different. That's why now we can control the yield, we can control the maturity better compared to to before with the name Petit Arlot. And Petit Arlot, you know, it was also for the young vines, but 1 year the young become older, so it's not always young. So we made reflection about the work in the vineyard, about also the manner to have a better expression of this grape variety for this vineyard. But it's the same.
Okay. Great. Thank you. No, I mean, as you said, it's actually drinking now. And you know, I look forward to seeing the development. Moving along, let's move to the next wine, Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges 17.
Clos des Forêts is for us the identity of the domain.
Is this correct?
Yes, you can. Yes, it's Clos des Forêts, the picture. It's, I said, for us, a big appellation, a big vineyard. It's exactly 7.2 hectares. I said it's half of the production. We have 15 hectares, 7.2 for this appellation. We have different parts inside this vineyard. We have the top, the middle, and the bottom, and with the top, the middle, and the bottom, different type of soils. The top, it's the same compared to Mont des Oiseaux. It's white limestone, with a part also of pink limestone. The middle and the bottom. I said the bottom before or the top?
The top.
The top, it's white and pink limestone.
Yeah.
The middle and the bottom, it's limestone from Ladois. And Ladois, it's unusual in the Côte de Nuit because we are in the Côte de Beaune with this type of soil. And it's characteristic of this vineyard. And we have also in the middle 2 faults. This vineyard is, I said, for us, the identity. We have some years, two tanks for the vinification, and when it's a better year, we can have 6 tanks. So we vinify. We try to vinify the 6th part, the top, the middle, the bottom, the right, and the left, into 6 tanks. But with this also we have different type of vinification, and sometimes we use, and it depends of the year. Sometimes we use all clusters, sometimes 100%, sometimes less. It depends. Of course, for every appellation. Sorry?
What about 2017? How much did you use?
About this appellation, it's all distemmed for the Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges.
Wow, okay. So you didn't
It
think
depends
you
on
need it in 17?
Sorry?
You don't think you need it in 2017?
It's more complex. Sometimes it's not, it's mostly feelings. Sometimes we say, and we see with the grapes, it's good to use this sort of technique. And sometimes we reduce the percentage of we distemmed. It depends. It depends when we are confident and when we receive the berries. Of course, we have an idea before. It depends also of the season. It depends of the summer. It depends of a lot of things. So sometimes it's very difficult to explain with only one reason why we use the distemmer or not. For this appellation or for this vintage, it's all distemmed. But I will explain differently with the cuvée just after, because it's the reason why this cuvée exists for this vintage. But for the Clos des Forêts, all is distemmed. Okay.
But I feel like I mean, obviously it's a different terroir, but you feel like the wine has more tannins. It's a bit deeper in taste. And in addition to red fruit, I get more spices as well in this wine.
Exactly. Yes, it's typical the illustration of the appellation Nuit Saint-Georges. We have black fruit. It's always cherry, but we have also some blood orange. It's a characteristic of this appellation, and we can notice this when we keep the wine longer. For this appellation, Clos des Forêts, we have also, as you said, more tannins, more structure. But for the vinification, it's the same technique. You know, we don't make more extraction for this appellation compared to the Mont des Oiseaux. The characteristic of this terroir, this appellation, is for me very different. We are at the frontier between Premaux-Prissé and Nuit Saint-Georges. And it's one also of the explanation. The color is different. We have more spices also. Normally, we say that we can keep longer compared to another appellation of the domain. I think it's the same potential of age for each appellation, but the expression is just different. We have more complexity.
What about the wood? How much new oak did you use in this cuvée?
The same percentage, and the average for 17, it's 45, the maximum is 45% of new oak.
Okay.
I just check. Yes, it's 45.
Okay.
And it's the maximum.
Right. Okay, great. I mean, this is a wine that obviously it's one of the signatures of the domaine, even
Yes.
though, of course, you have famous appellations like Romanée Saint-Vivant and all that, but this is really, as you say, the heart of the domain, since it represents half of the production. And whenever people think about Domaine de l'Arlot, this wine should be coming up first in their mind.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes it's more difficult because when you have monopoly, you are the only one to produce this appellation, so it's not possible to compare. The problem also is in Nuit Saint-Georges, the appellation Nuit Saint-Georges, we don't have Grand Cru, so it's more difficult to make promotion of this appellation, even if now I think it's not the same image compared to 40 years old. You know, it's we have more elegance in general. Every domain now wants to make wines very elegant, more qualitative, because it's also more expensive compared to a long time ago, and more people drink wines. So it's also important just to mention the fact that the consumers have changed.
Okay, great. Okay, so moving along, let's go to the third wine, which is the Cuvée Orline.
So Cuvée Orline, it's we are inside the Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges.
What photo is this?
This one, I think it's. Are you sure it's a photo of a domain?
I hope so. All right, let's change. That's definitely the domain.
No, I don't know. For me, you know, it's very short on my phone, so it's more difficult to recognize.
All right, let's use the cellar.
Yes, it's the cellar here. For the red. No, it's better. I'm sure it's here.
Okay,
for the Cuvée Orline, I said we are inside the Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges, and it's a special cuvée because for this cuvée, it's one tank. In fact, it's one tank of vinification, and it's 75% of all clusters. It's the difference between the rest of the appellation. And for us in blind tasting, and since the vinification until the bottling, it was more interesting to keep this cuvée because if we blended all the cuvée Clos des Forêts Saint-Georges, it was less interesting compared to two cuvées in bottles separately. I'm not sure if I am clear.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And that's why for me also, it's important to mention or to say this technical part, even if I don't really like to speak about all clusters, but for me it's one of the explanation of the difference between Clos des Forêts and Cuvée hors ligne. Cuvée hors ligne, it's a name very old in Burgundy. It's a sort of classification inside one appellation. And for us, it means also that we are inside the Clos des Forêts, but it's different. It's different with this technique. And finally, we have maybe more tannins, more vegetal aromas, but because of all clusters.
So you said 75%.
75%, yes. It was only for one vintage, 17. We don't have this cuvée in 18 or 19 because the blend are more interesting compared to each part inside the Clos des Forêts.
And which part is this again?
It's a very few quantity because it's 3,000 of bottles. Okay. So it's a very small tank.
And which part of the vineyard is this coming from?
It's two parts. It's one part on the bottom, the side Primo Brisset, and the middle inside the Clos des Forêts, side Nuit Saint-Georges. But it was a blend for the vinification. It's one tank.
How many plots are there within Clos des Forêts that you vinify separately?
6.
6 plots.
6. We divide the top, the middle, and the bottom with the right and the left.
Okay.
Normally, it depends of the year. It depends of the yield. It depends of a lot of things, but we try to have 6 tanks.
Okay. And if you're given a choice, would you divide it up even more? If you have if you have more space and more tanks, would you cut it up even more into 10 parts, 12 parts?
No. 6, it's good. It's not too much. Sometimes, because finally, it's normally with which is more interesting. It's the blend inside the Clos des Forêts, and even if each part is different from another one with a characteristic, sometimes we have more minerality, sometimes we have more tannins, or it's more rustic. It depends. But for me, the complexity is when the Clos des Forêts is blend. It's I say it's a wine, an appellation, complete and complex. So we vinify separately because it's not possible to have only one tank. But for me, 6 tanks, it's enough.
Okay, great. And you choose to taste this wine after Clos des Forêts for what reason?
Because as we have we have 75% of all clusters. For me, we have more body. The tannins are maybe more rustic or more present for the moment. But for me, we have also more potential for aging compared to the Clos des Forêts at this moment. We have more complexity for this cuvée hors ligne because of the old clusters compared to the Clos des Forêts. It's only for this reason.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more dominant. You have the stemmy
Oui.
stemmy nose, which will take more time to come around.
Exactly. Ouais.
Okay, so let's move to the last wine of today. We are sticking with Clos des Forêts, but the very famous 2015. Let me change
15.
the photo also. Voilà.
15 was, so for me, my first vintage alone here, in Domaine de l'Arlot. It's, I remember it was a good year with quiet season, even if we had, I remember, a high pressure in Oidium. But for this introduction, for me, for this vintage, I was confident to use a higher percentage of all clusters. And we have a lot for this vintage.
What did you use? What, 75% or more?
I try to say exactly. It's more than 50%.
Okay.
Because it depends of each part, you know, we have 100% for one tank, 100% for another one, but some others less, but the average is 50% of all clusters. So
you can feel the whole cluster, but it's already more balanced than the Orline for this wine.
It's another vintage. It's not the same. 15, yeah. We have a lot of density for this vintage, we have a good maturity, you know, it was a year in general warmer compared to 17. We started the harvest a little bit earlier compared to 17 also, and the maturity was different. So the expression are not completely the same, and that's why 15 for each appellation, for me, it's also, we can say, had a good potential, but 17 was more. It's not really. Sometimes I don't like to compare because every year is different, and it's
more
confusing.
Classical, right? You mentioned it's more classical.
17 was classic. Yes, it's a classical vintage. 15, it was surprising. The harvest was at the beginning of September. I said we had a very high level of maturity. A good balance between all the components. The extraction was also very natural because even if we have more color and more tannins for this vintage, you know, it's we don't push for the extraction, and that's why I say it's natural.
Yeah. No, I mean this has a lot of potential. You can feel this wine has great energy and great depth, and it's so different from the 17. I mean, for a Burgundian lover, I think you should like both, but at the moment, perhaps the 17 will give you a bit more immediate pleasure, whereas the 15 will go a long way and reward you with some aging. But congratulations! I mean, if this was your first vintage, I now remember, it was a great start.
It was a good year, also. You know, sometimes it helped me. You know, it's not the same compared to 13.
Yes,
If I
of
had
course.
to start with 13, I was less confident. So I said I am lucky to start in a new place with this vintage, with this sort of vintage.
Yes, great. So now that we're talking about vintage, give us a little bit of insight on the recent harvest, 2020, because a lot of people ask about 2020 being, of course, a difficult year for the world, but how was it for Burgundy or for your domain?
40-40, yes, I think we will remember. During all the season, it was very different. The work was the same but different, and the harvest was also completely not different, but surprising, in fact, because we started in August and we finished in August. And we didn't see this since the 2003.
Yeah.
So it was first a little bit disturbing, but finally we knew since the beginning in March that the harvest will be earlier or early. The season started very early. I said in March. I remember because normally we went at home. It was a little bit different with the COVID,
Yeah.
but we adapted. On s'est adapté. Oui. And the season has continued like this, sometimes we have something like this with the temperature and the season. Sometimes it's, we say it depends of the rain, it depends of the temperature, it depends of a lot of things. But for this year, since the beginning, it was like this. We say in general that every year is warmer and warmer. We also make sometimes some comparison when we start the work here for the day very early. Sometimes we start at 5 of the morning. Wow. to be able to work normally. And for 2020, no, we started normally at 7 or 7:30. It was not so warm or so hot compared to the previous vintages. So finally, because we were a little bit, I was a little bit stressed to start in August and to finish in August, because I was wondering how the vinification will be, how to vinify. But finally, we had, in general, a very, very good surprise to see that even if we have a little bit higher level of alcohol, we have also we say a high level of a good balance with the acidity and the fruit. We were surprised to keep such level of acidity, and not only with malic acid, because we didn't have a lot of malic acid, but a lot of tartaric acid. And for me, if we have a lot of freshness for this vintage 2020, which is surprising to speak about freshness when we start the harvest in August. It's a good surprise for us, and I think we have to be confident with the vineyard, even if the year are warmer and warmer. I think the wines keep a lot of freshness and the same characteristic of other vintages. Of course, we have we say a lot of color. We have color and tannins. It was easy to extract, and it's not the same compared to 17, for example, which is classical. 1990, it's not really classical, but
Right.
I think it will be a very good vintage.
Good.
Sure.
Well, it's too bad that I already missed the tasting of the 2019 vintage. I'm not sure when I'll be able to travel and see you and taste 19, but hopefully, for sure, at the end of next year, I'll be able to come and taste the 2020.
Yes, I hope. I hope too. You know, it's completely different now. We don't have a lot of tastings. We didn't see a lot of people. It's even for us. It's another manner to work. We speak by a phone with Instagram or sometimes with Zoom. It's another exercise. It's not the same relation, and I hope we can start and we can continue normal next year.
Let's hope so. Thank you so much for your time, Geraldine, and I'm glad
Thank you for your invitation.
It worked out today.
Thank you very much, and I hope yes to see you with better condition.
Yes, and all the best to you and the family and the baby, and also everyone at
Thank
the
you.
Domaine for this Christmas and New Year.
Thank you for you too. Have a nice Christmas, and I say a happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.